Welcome to Mira Stories. Welcome to stories that will keep you on edge.
The sun had barely rested when the air of Amuaka village began to change. The scent of roasted yam and palm wine floated over the red hills, and laughter rolled like thunder from one hut to another. It was the evening before the great harvest festival, a time when the drums of Amuaka sang louder than the crickets, and even the elders' feet itched to dance. In the heart of the village lived Amara, the daughter of a potter. Her skin gleamed like the wet clay her mother molded, and her eyes carried the shine of the river under moonlight. Amara was beautiful, and she knew it. When she walked through the market, women whispered behind their baskets, and young men forgot to greet the elders properly. Her mother, Mama Eid, often warned her, "My daughter, beauty is like a ripe mango, sweet today, spoiled tomorrow if not kept well." But Amara would laugh, swinging her waist with pride. "Mama, the mango doesn't spoil when everyone wants to taste it." That night, the villagers gathered in the square. Drums pounded. Horns echoed. The air was alive. Girls wore wrappers of bright indigo and coral beads that danced against their necks. Boys painted their bodies with white clay, leaping to the rhythm. Even the moon seemed to stand still to watch. Amara stepped out from her hut, dressed in a wrapper of red and gold, cowries at her waist. When she passed by, all heads turned. Some smiled, others frowned. Pride glowed on her face like oil on firewood. From a distance, Elder Okika, the oldest man in Amuaka, leaned on his staff and said to the other elders, "The river shines before the storm. She dances with her eyes closed to wisdom." But Amara didn't see him. Her heart beat only for the celebration. She had waited for this night, to show everyone that no maiden in Amuaka could move as gracefully as she. The drums spoke in language older than words. Cuckoo. Pa. Cuckoo. Pa. They called the youth to the dance. Amara joined them, her feet light as the wind. Dust rose around her, catching the firelight. She twirled, laughed, clapped, until even the drummers paused to watch her. An old woman sitting nearby whispered to another, "When a butterfly forgets its wings are fragile, it will fly into the flame." But Amara heard none of it. She was lost in the joy of being seen, of being the center of every eye. Her friend Ngozi came running to her. "Amara. Have you heard? The chief's son is hosting a smaller feast tomorrow night, only for the chosen maidens." Amara's eyes sparkled. "Chosen maidens? Then I am already chosen." Ngozi giggled nervously. "They say it's near the old Irako tree. My mother says no girl should go there after dark. She says the ancestors still walk that ground." Amara laughed loudly. "Ngozi, you and your mother still fear shadows. Tomorrow night, I will go. I will show them how to dance for the spirits and the living." She looked up at the glowing moon and smiled. What is life without a little fire? And somewhere behind the drums, Elder Okika whispered to the stars. The earth will speak to her, and she will learn to listen. As the night deepened, the drums continued, telling stories of love, harvest, and pride. The flames flickered like spirits clapping in rhythm. Amara danced until her feet ached and her breath came in gasps. When she finally sat beside her mother, the old woman smiled weakly. "You danced well, my daughter," Mama Eid said softly. "But remember, the ground beneath your feet is watching. The earth sees pride even when eyes do not." Amara rolled her eyes gently. "Mama, tonight I only danced, nothing more." But as she lay on her mat later, sleep teasing her eyes, she could still feel the drums pulsing through her chest. And faintly, through the hum of night insects, she thought she heard a whisper, soft, almost like the crawling of ants. She dismissed it and smiled into the dark. "Tomorrow," she said to herself, "I will dance like the queen I was born to be." When the first light of dawn painted the red soil gold, the village of Amuaka stirred to life again. Roosters crowed, women began pounding yam, and smoke curled lazily into the cool morning air. Amara awoke to the sounds of laughter outside her hut. Children ran past with clay pots, fetching water from the stream. Her mother, Mama Eid, was already outside, turning clay on her potter's wheel. "Mama," Amara said, stretching. "You're working early." Mama Eid smiled faintly, her hands covered in wet clay. "The pot waits for no one, my child. Yesterday you danced like fire. But fire burns fast if it doesn't learn to rest." Amara chuckled and knelt beside her. "Mama, everyone was talking about my dance. Even the drummers said I moved like wine through the forest." The old woman's eyes softened, but her words held weight. "Wind may move freely, but it forgets the trees that stand still. Don't let your beauty carry you away from your roots." Amara sighed. "You always speak in riddles." Mama Eid simply smiled, smoothing the rim of her pot. "Riddles keep wisdom alive." Later that day, as the sun climbed high, the market of Amuaka came alive with color and chatter. Women sold roasted maize, cowries, and beads. Men debated the price of palm oil. Amara walked proudly through the stalls, her steps deliberate, her smile confident. She stopped by Ngozi's mother's stand to buy fresh groundnut cake. Ngozi ran up to her, excitement in her eyes. "Amara. You won't believe what happened," she said, clutching her friend's arm. Amara laughed. "If it's about food, I will believe it. You always—" "No, listen." Ngozi interrupted, lowering her voice. "A messenger came this morning from the chief's compound. They are inviting you, Amara, to the private harvest feast tonight." Amara blinked. "Me? Are you sure?" Ngozi nodded eagerly. "They said the chief's son, Obina, personally chose your name." A flush of pride warmed Amara's cheeks. "Obina, the one who studied with the priests at Yamun's?" "The same," Ngozi said, giggling. "He just returned to the village. They say he brought back stories of distant lands and wears white robes like the sun." Amara smiled knowingly. "Then it seems the sun has noticed the flower." Ngozi frowned. "My mother says no good girl goes near the old Irako tree at night. The ancestors rest there," she said. Amara waved her hand dismissively. "Ngozi, please. It's just a feast, a small party among the chief's people. What harm can there be in celebration?" Ngozi bit her lip but said nothing more. By evening, the village buzzed with talk. Everyone had heard that the chief's son was hosting a private feast by the old Irako clearing, a place said to hold the whispers of the ancestors. Amara prepared carefully. She wore her best wrapper, the one dyed in deep purple with golden edges. Her mother braided her hair with beads that clicked softly as she moved. Before Amara left, Mama Eid placed her hands on her daughter's shoulders. "Amara," she said gently, "remember what the elders say, not every drumbeat is meant for every foot." Amara smiled reassuringly. "Mama, I will be careful. It's only a party, nothing more." The old woman sighed and watched her daughter disappear down the red path. The crickets began their song as the sun dipped low. The path to the Irako clearing wound through the edge of the forest. The air grew cooler, filled with the scent of night flowers. Fireflies floated like tiny stars. Amara could already hear drums in the distance, soft at first, then stronger. She smiled, walking faster. The rhythm was sweet, welcoming. Voices sang in call and response. "O Malika! Beauty of the land! Dance and the moon will bless your feet." As she neared the clearing, the trees opened into a wide space lit by oil lamps and torches. Young men and women moved gracefully to the rhythm of the drums. Mats were spread with food, roasted yam, plantain, honeyed kola nuts. At the center sat Obina, the chief's son, wearing a flowing white robe with beads of tiger's eye on his neck. His smile was calm, his gaze sharp like the edge of a new machete. "Welcome, Amara," he said as she approached. "The village spoke of your beauty, but the words did you no justice." Amara bowed slightly, her heart fluttering. "You honor me, my prince." He laughed softly. "Here, there are no princes, only hearts that dance to the same drum." His words wrapped around her like silk. For the first time, Amara felt something more than pride, she felt seen. The drums continued, faster, louder. The youth cheered, their laughter rising into the night. Obina stood and raised a calabash of palm wine. "Tonight we celebrate the earth that feeds us, the river that cools us, and the beauty that walks among us." The crowd cheered. But as Amara lifted her own calabash to drink, something soft brushed against her ankle. She looked down. A single ant crawled across her foot. She smiled faintly, brushing it away. Even the small ones wished to dance tonight. Obina chuckled, not noticing the flicker in her eyes. "Then let them. The earth is alive, my dear." They drank, they laughed, they danced. But as the moon climbed higher, Amara began to feel a strange stillness beneath her joy, like the air was watching, waiting. And somewhere beyond the drums, a quiet whisper stirred the night leaves. The moon was round and proud, a silver calabash hanging in the black sky. Its light spilled softly on the old Irako clearing, painting the faces of dancers, drummers, and dreamers. The rhythm of the drums grew stronger, their heartbeat rising from the red earth. Cuckoo pa. Cuckoo pa. The men stamped, the women twirled, beads clinking, anklets ringing. It was as if the spirits of the ancestors had joined the celebration unseen, swaying with the living under the watchful moon. Amara's laughter rang through the air like bells. Her movements were graceful, the kind that made people stop and stare. The golden beads at her waist shimmered with every turn, catching the firelight like drops of sunlight. Obina clapped his hands, smiling. "You dance as though the wind obeys your spirit." Amara smiled. "The wind only follows where it feels joy." He nodded slowly. "Then tonight, joy follows you." He led her to sit beside him on a woven mat near the musicians. Palm wine flowed freely, and roasted yam passed from hand to hand. The laughter of youth filled the space between the drumbeats. But just beyond the firelight, shadows of tall trees swayed, not menacing, but watchful. The forest always listened when humans sang. The drummers shifted rhythm. The eldest among them, Okoro, an old man with white cowries on his wrists, began to sing an ancestral song. His voice was deep, cracked by age, yet strong like flowing water. The earth holds stories that the feet forget. The wind remembers what the lips regret. Dance, my children, but do not forget. The ants hear the footsteps of the proud. The others joined in, their voices weaving through the night like threads of smoke. Amara clapped along, but her mind lingered on the line, the ants hear the footsteps of the proud. She leaned closer to Obina. Your drummers sing like they are warning someone. He chuckled softly. Old Okoro always sings in riddles. His tongue was born with wisdom, but even he does not know what he says. Amara smiled faintly, but the words stayed with her. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet earth, that scent that comes when rain hides in clouds. Amara gazed up at the moon. It seemed closer than usual, brighter, as though it was staring back at her. And for the briefest moment, she felt something, a small vibration under her foot, like tiny movements in the soil. She looked down, expecting to see grass swaying, but saw nothing. The sensation vanished. She brushed it off and smiled again. Perhaps the earth joins our dance tonight. Obina poured her another cup of palm wine. Then let us drink to the earth, he said, raising his calabash. For without it, even the proud cannot stand. They both drank. As the night deepened, stories began, the kind told around fires when laughter fades into curiosity. The storyteller, Ajanma, rose from his stool. He was thin, with eyes that had seen more seasons than anyone could count. His voice came soft and steady, commanding silence without effort. He began. Once, in the time when the rivers still spoke and trees could move, there lived a young maiden who danced too proudly before the gods. Her feet struck the ground without thanks, her laughter echoed without care. The spirits watched her and said, "We must teach her that the earth is not her stage, but her mother." The fire crackled. Everyone listened. So one night, as she danced under the moon, they sent the smallest of their messengers, not thunder, not wind, but ants. And when the ants began to crawl upon her feet, she remembered the humility of soil, the very thing she once forgot to honor. The crowd hummed, nodding in understanding. Amara felt something stir inside her chest. The ants, again. The story seemed to pull at something deep within her. She looked toward the dark edge of the clearing. The ground looked still, yet alive, breathing. Obina noticed her silence. "You seem lost in thought." Amara blinked. "That story, it feels like something I've heard before. My grandmother used to speak of such tales." Obina smiled. "Then perhaps the ancestors speak through Ajanma tonight." The drummers began again, gentler this time, a song of memory and gratitude. Some of the youths danced softly, their movements like whispers. Amara joined them once more, but her heart danced differently. No longer to impress, but to feel. She looked down occasionally, half expecting to see tiny crawlers by her toes. But all she saw was the shimmer of dust and moonlight. When the drums finally rested, and laughter softened into yawns, Obina turned to her. "You should stay until dawn," he said. "The forest is safe when the ancestors dance with us." Amara smiled but shook her head. "My mother will worry. Besides, I must rise early to help her with clay." He nodded. "Then go with light steps. And if you dream tonight, may the earth whisper kindly to your soul." Amara thanked him, bowed slightly, and began her walk home. The path back to the village was calm. The torches flickered low. The forest hummed with life, crickets, frogs, night birds. And as she walked, her bare feet pressed softly into the warm soil. She could feel each grain, each pebble, and she wondered if the earth truly listened. When she finally reached her hut, her mother was asleep. Amara lay on her mat, her body tired but her mind full. The song of Ajanma echoed in her head. "The ants hear the footsteps of the proud." She smiled faintly, whispering to herself, "Then I will tread gently." And as her eyes closed, the night outside hummed in rhythm, soft, peaceful, alive. Morning broke gently over Umuaka. The cock crowed thrice before Amara stirred from her mat. Sunlight crept through the thatched roof, dusting her face with gold. She rose slowly, her muscles aching pleasantly from the previous night's dancing. Outside, women were already at the stream, their laughter echoing like songs from another world. Mama Eid was pounding yam by the doorway, her wrapper tied firmly around her waist. She looked up when Amara stepped out. "Welcome back, moon dancer," she said softly. Amara smiled, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mama, it was a beautiful night. The chief's son was there. The drums, the songs." Mama Eid listened without interruption, her pestle moving rhythmically. When Amara paused for breath, she said only, "Did you listen to the earth?" Amara frowned. "The earth?" "Yes, my child," Mama Eid replied. "The earth that carried your feet as you danced. Did you feel it speak beneath your joy?" Amara hesitated, remembering the faint tremor she'd felt, the story Ajanma told, the way the ants had appeared at her foot before. "I felt something," she admitted. "But it was small, maybe just the ground shaking from the drums." Mama Eid nodded knowingly. The ground never shakes for no reason. The small ones, ants, wind, dust, are the earth's messengers. When they come, something deeper is calling. Amara sighed and smiled. Mama, you speak like a Janma the storyteller. Her mother laughed softly. All mothers are storytellers. We just use different fires. That afternoon, Amara walked to the river to fetch water. The sky was a deep blue, and the air smelled of rain yet to come. The trees leaned over the path as though listening to her thoughts. When she reached the riverbank, she set down her calabash and knelt by the water. The river sang quietly, rippling with sunlight. She dipped her hands in, watching the circles spread outward. Her reflection smiled back, young, bright, confident, yet something in her eyes felt new. Softer. As she rose to fill her calabash, she noticed movement near her feet. Ants. Tiny, golden-brown ones, moving in a straight line along the red soil. They crawled not in chaos, but with purpose, hundreds of them, all moving toward the same direction. Amara watched curiously. They weren't biting, they simply passed by her toes like a living river. Something in her heart stirred. She followed them, barefoot, careful not to step on them. The line of ants led her away from the main path, toward a quiet part of the river where the water met thick grass and soft mud. The air there was cooler, heavy with the scent of wet leaves. Then she saw it. A small calabash, half buried in the mud, decorated with faded white symbols. The ants had formed a circle around it, crawling over its lid as though guarding it. Amara's breath caught. She recognized those markings. They were the same designs her late grandmother used to carve on her pots, spirals that represented unity, strength, and rebirth. Her knees grew weak as she knelt beside it. She brushed the mud gently from the calabash. When she lifted the lid, her heart trembled. Inside lay a single necklace, woven from cowries and old beads of blue and white. The same necklace her grandmother wore until the day she died. Amara gasped softly. Neka, she whispered, naming her grandmother. How can this be here? The wind answered, cool and tender. In that moment, something deep inside her shifted. The ants moved calmly, circling the calabash as though completing a sacred dance. Amara placed her hand on her chest, tears glimmering in her eyes. Is this your doing, grandmother? Did you send the small ones to remind me? She remembered Neka's words from years ago, spoken beside a fire on a night much like this one. When the small ones move together, even the mighty take notice. The ant does not roar, yet it changes the shape of the earth. Amara's tears fell freely. She understood. It wasn't a warning she'd felt the past nights, it was a message. The earth had been whispering, and she had almost missed it because she was too busy shining. She knelt fully, bowing her head. Forgive me, Mother Earth. Forgive me, Grandmother. I danced without listening. The wind swirled softly around her. The ants began to scatter, their work done. She tied the necklace around her neck, feeling its weight and warmth. It wasn't heavy, it felt like memory and love. When she looked into the river again, her reflection seemed older, wiser. She carried the calabash back to the village carefully, holding it as if it contained her soul. As she entered the square, children playing nearby paused to stare. Some whispered, "That's Amara, the dancer." Others said, "See, she carries something sacred." Amara smiled gently. For the first time, their words didn't fill her with pride, only peace. Mama Eid saw her coming and stood, wiping her hands. "What did you find?" she asked. Amara placed the calabash before her. "A gift," she said softly. "From those who crawl but see what we overlook." Mama Eid nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "Then you have truly begun to listen." They embraced under the fading sun. The drums in the distance began again, softer this time, not calling to dance,
but to remember. And for the first time, Amara danced not for admiration, but for gratitude.
The days after the finding of the calabash passed slowly, like a long song carried by the evening wind. Amara was not the same girl who once ran to every dance. Something in her heart had quieted, yet it was not sadness. It was understanding, the kind that grows in silence. Every morning, she wore the ancestral necklace. It glowed faintly under the sun, the cowries warm against her skin. When she fetched water, the women whispered, "There goes Amara, the chosen one of the ants." She only smiled humbly and greeted them with both hands. Even the elders noticed. Elder Okika said one morning, "The river that once rushed now flows clear. The child begins to see the bottom." One afternoon, as she was weaving mats under the Udala tree, a soft humming filled her ears. It wasn't a song, nor a voice she could name, more like the sound of wind speaking through water. She looked around. The world was still. Then she saw them, ants, again. This time, they weren't crawling in a straight line. They were circling around her mat in perfect rhythm, as if performing a dance only they understood. Amara's heart stirred. She remembered her grandmother's words, "When the earth wants to speak, it borrows the smallest mouths." She bent low, whispering to them. "What do you want to show me, my little elders?" At that moment, a sudden breeze swept through the trees. The leaves rustled like rattles. And within that wind, she heard it, a voice. Soft, ancient, layered with echoes. "Child of the clay, daughter of song," it said. "You danced for men and forgot the dance of the soil." Amara froze. The ants continued to move, their pattern glowing faintly against the red ground, forming a symbol she had seen before, the spiral from her grandmother's pots. "The ground beneath your feet remembers what you forget," the voice continued. "You were born of earth and must return honor to it." Tears filled her eyes. "What must I do?" she whispered. "Listen. Give thanks. Dance again, but this time, not for praise." And just as suddenly as it began, the wind died. The ants scattered into the grass, leaving only the spiral mark on the earth. Amara sat there for a long time, her hands trembling. She knew now that this was no dream. The ancestors, the land, the small crawling creatures, they were all part of one great story. That evening, she went to Elder Okika's hut. The old man was sitting by his fire, pounding kola nut slowly. "Daughter," he said, without looking up, "the earth has finally spoken to you." She nodded, kneeling respectfully. "Yes, Baba." It spoke through the wind and the ants. He smiled, eyes gleaming like old stars. "Good. The earth never wastes its words. Few still hear it these days. They have covered their ears with pride and their eyes with desire." Amara bowed her head. "What must I do, Baba?" He handed her a carved wooden bowl filled with river sand. "Go to the same place where you found the calabash. Draw what you saw, the spiral. Pour libation, and dance for the earth. Thank it for patience." Amara accepted the bowl reverently. "I will do as you say." That night, the moon rose full and bright, silvering the trees and huts with its calm light. Amara walked alone to the riverbank. She wore her grandmother's necklace, and in her hand was the bowl of sand. The river sang quietly, as if waiting. She knelt where she had found the calabash, drew the spiral symbol on the ground, and placed the bowl in its center. She poured palm wine around it, whispering, "To the earth that carried me when I forgot its strength. To the ants who spoke when I refused to listen. To my grandmother, who lives in wind and soil. I dance for you tonight." She stood up, closed her eyes, and began to move. It was not the proud, fiery dance of the festival. This was slow, grounded, almost like a prayer. Her feet touched the earth softly, her hands rose and fell in rhythm with the river's murmur. And as she danced, something beautiful happened. The ants returned, forming a glowing path around her feet. The moonlight reflected in their bodies until it seemed she was dancing on stars. The wind lifted her wrapper like wings, and the trees swayed gently. The voice came again, this time, full of warmth. Now you remember who you are. Amara wept as she danced. Not from sorrow, but from peace. When the dance ended, the ants slowly disappeared into the soil. The wind grew calm. And the spiral symbol she had drawn was now shining faintly, alive with light. She fell to her knees and whispered, "Thank you." When she returned home, Mama Eid was waiting. Without a word, she saw the peace on her daughter's face and smiled. "You have danced for the living and the dead," she said softly. "Now, you carry balance." Amara nodded. "The earth speaks gently, Mama. But I will never close my ears again." The next day, she visited every elder's hut to offer help, fetching water, cleaning the compound, mending mats. No one told her to, she simply wanted to give back. Children began to follow her, singing, "Amara, the earth listener. Amara, daughter of the ants." And whenever she heard them, she only laughed. Not in pride, but gratitude. Dawn in Amuaka carried a new kind of peace. The rooster's cry no longer rushed people from sleep, instead, it sounded like the beginning of a sacred song. The air smelled of wet leaves and cassava bread, the kind mothers baked when blessings were near. Amara woke to this new peace. The necklace of cowries rested softly on her chest, warm as living skin. She stretched her arms, feeling the quiet pulse of the earth beneath her hut. Mama Eid was already awake, humming an old song, one her grandmother used to sing during the planting season. The soil knows the hands that touch it with love. And the sky gives rain to those who dance in gratitude. Amara listened and smiled. Every sound in the village now carried meaning, even the flutter of birds or the footsteps of children. When she stepped out, she saw Elder Okika waiting near the gate, leaning on his carved staff. His eyes twinkled. "Daughter of the ants," he greeted, "the earth walks lighter beneath your feet now." Amara bowed respectfully. "And I listen more deeply now, Baba." He nodded. "Good. It is time for you to share what you've learned. The people need reminding." "Reminding of what?" she asked. "That the land is not just soil. It breathes. It listens. It remembers," he replied. "Many have forgotten this truth. You must help them remember, not with words, but with dance." Amara hesitated. "Dance again?" "Yes," Okika said softly. "The same gift that once fed your pride will now heal your people." So it was decided. A great gathering would be held at sunset, not to celebrate the harvest this time, but to give thanks to the earth. The women of Amuaka prepared the square. They swept the ground until it shone red and smooth. Children carried palm fronds and flowers to decorate the space. Men brought drums and calabashes of fresh water from the stream. But this time, no one dressed to impress. They dressed in humility, white wrappers, bare feet, and simple beads. As the sun began to fall, painting the sky gold and orange, the villagers gathered in a circle. The air was thick with calm anticipation. Amara stepped into the center. Her wrapper was plain, her hair tied back, her face free of powder or pride. Around her neck, the cowrie beads gleamed softly in the dying light. Elder Okika stood beside her. He raised his staff and spoke, "People of Amuaka, we have danced for praise and for pleasure. Tonight, we dance for peace, between us and the land that feeds us." He struck the ground 3 times with his staff. "Let the earth open its heart." The drummers began, slowly, a heartbeat rhythm. Thumb, thumb, thumb. Amara closed her eyes. She felt the pulse beneath her feet, the cool red soil carrying 1,000 memories. Then she began to move. It wasn't the fierce spinning of festivals or the seductive swaying that once drew eyes. This was different. Each step was a prayer. Each movement, a whisper of gratitude. She bent low, touching the ground, then rose to face the sky. The people watched in silence. The drummers followed her rhythm, their hands guided not by sight but by spirit. The children began to hum softly, imitating the wind. The ants, yes, the ants, appeared again, forming small circles around the villagers' feet. Mama Eid gasped softly but didn't move away. She knew. Soon, others joined in the dance. Women, men, even elders who hadn't moved in years, they began to sway gently, guided by something greater than rhythm. The square became alive, not wild, but sacred. The ground trembled slightly, not in fear, but in joy. The trees rustled as though clapping in approval. Tears filled Amara's eyes. She felt her grandmother's spirit beside her, calm, proud, radiant. Then a voice rose among the people, old and cracked, yet powerful. Blessed be the child who listens to the crawling ones. Blessed be the land that forgives our forgetfulness. The crowd echoed, Blessed be. A gentle rain began to fall, fine, silvery drops that sparkled in the moonlight. Not heavy, but soft enough to cool the dancers. It was as though the sky itself had joined the ceremony. Amara lifted her arms to the heavens. Thank you, she whispered. The ants slowly disappeared into the soil once more, their work complete. When the drums ceased, silence filled the square, a peaceful, sacred silence. Then Elder Okika spoke, his voice steady. The dance is complete. The earth has accepted our offering. He looked at Amara with deep pride. From this day, you are not just Amara, daughter of Eid. You are Amara, the earth listener, keeper of the small voices. The people cheered softly, not in noise but in reverence. Women ululated, and children laughed with joy. Amara smiled through tears. She wasn't the center anymore, the earth was. And that was the greatest joy of all. That night, the village slept under peace like a blanket. The rain washed away dust, pride, and old pain. In dreams, many saw the ants, tiny, glowing, moving in circles that became spirals of light. And far away, beyond the forest, Neka's spirit smiled. Her granddaughter had learned what she once tried to teach. The smallest creatures can carry the loudest truths. The days after the rain felt like a blessing reborn. The crops grew taller, the goats grew fatter, and laughter became the new sound of a mueca. The villagers said the earth had forgiven them, and the ants had carried their prayers to the ancestors. But peace, as the elders say, is like a calabash balanced on water, steady only when hands are gentle. It began when Abika, the village fisherman, returned from the river one morning, his face dark with anger. He stormed into the square, shouting, "The river has turned against me. My nets come up empty, even where fish once danced." The people gathered, murmuring. Elder Okika approached him calmly. "What happened, son of the river?" Abika spat on the ground. "I do not know. Perhaps the spirits favor others now. Perhaps it is this new peace dance that has angered the gods of the water." A silence fell. Amara, who had been helping children plant seedlings nearby, turned to look. She saw pride burning in his eyes, a pride she once knew too well. Okika raised his hand. "Mind your tongue, Abika. The earth and the river are one. They do not fight each other." But Abika was not listening. "You all follow this girl now, this dancer who speaks to ants. Yet the river, which feeds us, dries before my eyes." Amara stepped forward gently. "Abika," she said, "no spirit has turned against you. Maybe the river is calling for your patience." He sneered. "And what would a girl who plays with sand know of the river's hunger?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mama Eid stood, her eyes flashing. But Amara touched her mother's hand, stopping her. "I will go," Amara said quietly. "Let me speak to the river." That evening, she walked alone along the path that led to Mira, the sacred bend of the river. The air was heavy with mist, the scent of wet earth thick around her. The water was low, whispering weakly over stones. She knelt at the edge, her reflection pale and still. "Mother River," she whispered, "why have you closed your heart?" At first, there was no answer, only the sound of frogs and distant crickets. Then a ripple moved across the water, gentle but sure. A voice, soft as a sigh, rose from the current. "The hand that takes without gratitude leaves the bowl empty." Amara's heart sank. So Abika took without thanks? He forgot that the river does not belong to the fisherman belongs to the river. She bowed her head. "Then how can we restore your favor?" "Remind him of balance," the river whispered. "Let him return what he took without offering. Let his pride bend like the reeds that live at my edge." The water stilled again. Amara stayed by the river until the moon rose high, its light shimmering like silver paint on the surface. She could feel the ants crawling near her feet again, moving in slow patterns, spirals, circles, paths of patience. The next morning, she returned to the village. Abika was sitting by his hut, mending his torn nets, still frowning. Amara approached quietly. "Abika," she said, "I went to the river." He looked up sharply. "And what did the water tell you, little priestess?" She smiled faintly. "That the river is not angry, only forgotten." He scowled. "Forgotten?" "Yes," she said. "You take fish from her, but when do you offer her anything in return? When did you last pour libation or thank her for her gifts?" Abika's hands froze. I do not remember." She nodded softly. "Then remember today. The river's burden is not anger, it is loneliness." He said nothing for a long while. Then, slowly, he stood. "Show me what to do." Amara led him back to Mira. When they arrived, she handed him a calabash of palm wine. "Kneel," she said gently. "Pour and speak." Abika knelt, trembling slightly. He poured the wine onto the water and said, "Forgive me, Mother of the Deep. I took and never thanked you. Let my nets be light again, and my heart lighter still." The river rippled once, like a smile. Amara closed her eyes. "Now, wait." They stood in silence. Then, suddenly, movement in the water. Dozens of fish leapt, their silver scales flashing like laughter in the light. Abika fell to his knees, tears in his eyes. "It is true," he whispered. "She forgives." Amara placed a hand on his shoulder. "The earth always forgives, it is humans who forget to listen." When they returned to the village, Abika told everyone what had happened. From that day, the fishermen poured libation before casting their nets. The farmers prayed before planting. The children learned to speak to ants and rivers with respect. And as for Amara, she continued to teach quietly, humbly, walking the red paths of Amuaka with peace in her step. The people now called her not just Amara the earth listener, but Amara the keeper of balance. The morning after the river's peace, Amuaka was quiet. The sky was the color of ripe guava, and the air smelled of wet soil and roasted maize. Amara sat under the Udala tree, grinding herbs with a smooth stone. Children ran past, laughing, their bare feet kicking up red dust. The sound made her smile, laughter had returned to the land like rain after drought. Mama Eid joined her, sitting slowly beside the basket of herbs. "My daughter," she said, "you've brought healing to our people. Even the stubborn ones now greet the river before they drink." Amara smiled. "The earth was only waiting for us to remember, Mama." Mama Eid nodded, then looked at her thoughtfully. "But do you feel it?" "Feel what?" "The wind," her mother whispered. It moves differently these days. As if calling your name. Amara paused. For days, she had felt something new, a stirring in her spirit, like the wind tugging gently at her heart. It came most clearly in the evenings, when the world was quiet and even the ants had gone to rest. She had ignored it, but now she understood, the wind was calling her. That night, the wind rose stronger than usual. It whistled through the trees, carrying the scent of faraway fires and strange songs. Amara lay on her mat, eyes open, watching the moonlight spill through the roof. Then she heard it, a whisper in the air, soft but certain. Child of the earth, the ground beneath your feet is not the only one that thirsts for listening. Amara sat up slowly. Who speaks? She asked. The wind, came the answer. I travel where the soil is silent and forgotten. I carry the cries of other lands, lands that have lost their dance. Her heart quickened. What must I do? Go, the wind sighed. Carry your dance beyond Amuaka. Teach others to thank before they take. Speak the language of small things. Amara's eyes filled with wonder and fear. But I am only a potter's daughter. I have no wealth, no power. You have the earth beneath your feet and the ants to guide your path. That is enough. Then, as suddenly as it came, the wind grew still. Amara sat for a long time, listening to her own heartbeat. She knew the ancestors were asking her to journey, not for fame or praise, but for purpose. The next morning, she went to Elder Okika. The old man was plaiting palm fronds outside his hut, his movements slow but steady. Baba, she said, kneeling, the wind spoke to me last night. He didn't look surprised. And what did it say? That I must go. That other lands have forgotten the dance of the soil. He sighed deeply, tying off the last frond. The wind always finds those whose hearts are light enough to travel. Amara lowered her gaze. But what of my mother? My home? He smiled kindly. You will never leave them behind. Every footstep you take carries the red dust of Amuaka. He stood slowly, leaning on his staff. Go with blessings. Carry our songs, our stories, our respect for the crawling ones. And when you teach, do not speak of yourself, speak of the earth. Amara nodded, tears in her eyes. That evening, the whole village gathered to send her off. They sang old songs, songs of travelers, of blessings, of spirits that walk beside the brave. Mama Eid tied a strip of her wrapper around Amara's wrist. This will remind you of home, she whispered. Amara embraced her tightly. I will return when the wind brings me back. Then she turned to the crowd. If you ever see ants crawling toward your feet, she said, smiling softly, do not step on them. Stop. Listen. The earth might be speaking again. The villagers nodded, some wiping tears, others smiling proudly. As the sun dipped below the hills, Amara began her walk down the dusty path that led out of Amuaka. The wind moved gently at her back, carrying her steps forward. And from somewhere in the grass, the faint, rhythmic movement of ants kept her company. For many nights, she traveled, through forests thick with the smell of life, across dry plains where the stars felt close enough to touch. Everywhere she went, she spoke gently to the people, teaching them how to listen. She never demanded belief, she only told her story. In one village, she taught farmers to thank the soil before sowing seeds. In another, she taught hunters to whisper gratitude before taking an animal's life. And in every place, she left behind a small circle of cowries or an image of the spiral, the mark of unity between earth, life, and spirit. Soon, the wind began to whisper her name across the lands. Amara, the listener. But to her, she was still just Amara, the girl who once thought a party was only a dance. Amara walked for 7 suns and 7 moons. Beyond the rivers, beyond the forests, beyond the rolling fields of maize, she came to a place unlike any she had known. It was called Abodo-Ij, the land that moves forward. The soil was cracked and gray, though the people built tall fences and wide farms. Their huts were round and clean, their markets full, but their songs were few. The children did not play in the dust. The elders did not tell stories by the fire. When Amara entered the village, the people looked at her with curiosity. Her feet were dusty, her wrapper simple, and her small bag made from woven grass. But her eyes shone with calm, and the spiral of white clay on her hand caught the sunlight. "Good day," she greeted. No one answered at first. Then an old woman, carrying a calabash on her head, stopped. "You are not from here," she said. Amara smiled gently. "No, Mama. I come from Amuaka, beyond the hills." The old woman frowned. "What brings you here?" "I follow the wind," Amara said. "It told me your land is thirsty." The woman chuckled bitterly. "Thirsty? We have wells in every square, water in every pot." Amara looked at the cracked ground beneath her feet. "Water is not the only thirst that dries the earth." The woman shook her head and walked on. That night, Amara slept under a tree by the edge of the market. As the stars blinked above her, she heard no singing, no laughter, only the sharp sound of hammers and traders counting coins. The ants crawled near her again, circling softly, and she whispered, "What happened here?" The wind answered faintly, "They forgot the voice of the ground. They build and buy, but they no longer bow." Amara closed her eyes, whispering, "Then tomorrow, I will remind them." The next morning, she went to the market square. The traders were busy, shouting, bargaining, weighing yams and palm oil. Amara stepped into the center, lifted a small calabash of soil, and called out, "People of Abodo-Ij, the earth beneath your feet is speaking." The crowd paused, startled. One of the men, tall, with a fine cloth around his waist and beads on his neck, laughed. "Speaking? Does the ground now sell palm oil too?" Some laughed. Others shook their heads. Amara smiled softly. "No, it sells peace, if you will buy it with gratitude." A young woman sneered. "We have peace already. Look around you, full baskets, strong walls, no hunger." Amara looked at her kindly. "Yes, your baskets are full. But your hearts?" Silence. Then the man with beads frowned. "You come from the hills with riddles, but we do not have time for stories. The sun moves, and trade must go on." Amara nodded. "Then I will not stop your trade. Only, before you count your money today, touch the soil once, and thank it." The man laughed again. "For what?" Amara said quietly, "For holding your feet." Then she turned and left the square. That evening, a storm rolled over the land, heavy clouds, sudden winds, dust spinning like ghosts. But no rain came. Instead, the sky roared, and the ground cracked deeper. The people ran for shelter, shouting, "The gods are angry." Amara stood in the middle of it all, her wrapper whipping in the wind. She raised her hands and spoke to the sky. "Mother Earth, do not be angry. Your children have forgotten your name, but they are only lost, not wicked." The wind howled, bending the trees. Then, suddenly, Amara felt something, not fear, but presence. The ants began to crawl again, thick and quick, forming a circle around her. From their movement came a pattern, the same spiral she had carried since the first night at the festival. The people watched from their windows, wide-eyed. Then, just as suddenly, the wind stopped. The clouds broke. And gentle rain began to fall, slow, pure, patient. Amara knelt, pressing her hands into the mud. "Balance has returned," she whispered. "Even here." The next morning, the chief of Abodo-Ij came to her. He was an old man with a robe of red and a crown of cowries. He bowed slightly. "Woman of the ants, what have you done to our sky?" Amara smiled. I reminded it that you are still listening. The chief sighed. You have power, child. Stay, and I will make you priestess of this land. Amara shook her head gently. I did not come for titles. I came to teach, and to leave peace behind. The old man nodded slowly. Then teach us, before the wind carries you again. And so, Amara stayed for a season, showing them the old ways of thanks, song, and humility. When the children played again and the elders told stories by the fire, she knew her work was done. As she prepared to leave, the chief asked, What should we call this dance you've brought us? Amara smiled. It has no name. It is not mine. It belongs to the ants, the wind, and the earth. She looked at the horizon where the hills shimmered under the morning sun. I will return home soon, the wind is already turning. And with that, she walked on, her footprints fading softly into the red dust. The wind carried Amara home. Not swiftly, but softly, like the hand of a mother guiding her child. She passed through the same forests where she once danced under the stars. The same paths where the ants had first surrounded her feet. But now she walked not as the girl who had been curious about a party. Not even as the one who spoke with rivers and winds. She walked as a woman who had listened and understood. When she reached Amuaka, the drums were sounding again. The air smelled of palm wine and roasted yam. The villagers were preparing for the festival of the new moon. Mama Eid saw her first. She dropped her basket and ran, her laughter breaking through the afternoon like sunlight through clouds. My daughter, she cried. The wind has brought you home. Amara laughed softly, hugging her mother tightly. Yes, Mama. And the wind says you've kept the earth happy. Mama Eid smiled proudly. We listen now before we act. The soil and the river know our names again. Elder Okika soon joined them, his staff tapping the ground. Ah, the child who taught the ants to speak returns. Amara bowed. No, Baba. The ants always spoke. I only learned how to listen. He chuckled. Then tell us, listener, what did the world teach you? Amara looked at the horizon, where the sky kissed the hills. She breathed deeply and said, that peace is not a gift from the earth, it is a promise we must keep with her every day. That evening, the festival began. The drums beat low and steady, not for show, but in rhythm with the heartbeat of the soil. People danced barefoot, so they could feel the dust rise and settle beneath their steps. As the moon climbed, Amara joined them, moving slowly, gracefully, her feet tracing spirals in the sand. And then, as if remembering an old call, the ants began to crawl again. This time, no one screamed. The villagers watched in awe as the ants moved in circles around the dancers, forming patterns that glowed faintly under the moonlight, like the earth itself was dancing with them. Amara stopped, kneeling. She placed her hand gently on the ground. The ants paused, as if bowing, and then began to carry tiny grains of soil toward her hand. A single tear fell from her eye. She whispered, You came back. The wind brushed her face, warm and kind, and she heard the faintest whisper, You never left us. Elder Okika raised his voice so all could hear. Tonight, let it be known, this is not just a dance. It is the song between humans and the earth, a song our children must never forget. The people cheered, their voices rising like the hum of the wind through trees. Mama Eid took Amara's hand. You began this with your heart, my child. You thought it was just a party. Amara smiled, finishing her mother's words softly, until the ants began to crawl. As dawn approached, the last drumbeats faded. The ants returned to the earth, their patterns dissolving like dreams into the soil. And in the hush of early light, Amara whispered one final prayer. May we never forget that the smallest among us carry the greatest wisdom. The wind answered, not in words, but in a soft, content sigh through the leaves. The story of Amara, the listener, spread far and wide. But in Amuaka, she remained simple, helping, teaching, and listening to the hum of life beneath her feet. And so, long after she had gone, whenever the people of Amuaka heard the rustle of ants or the murmur of wind, they would smile and say, "Amara is speaking again. Respect the small things, and the great things will respect you. The earth listens to those who listen to it. Peace is not found in wealth or walls, but in gratitude, for even the crawling ants serve a purpose greater than pride." The end.